Good morning. My name is Kristen Clark, Assistant Attorney General for the Civil Rights Division of the U.S. Department of Justice. I am joined today by United States Attorney Ronald Gath for the Middle District of Louisiana, United States Attorney Dwayne Evans for the Eastern District of Louisiana, and United States Attorney Brandon Brown for the Western District of Louisiana. Today, the Justice Department is opening a civil investigation into the Louisiana State Police and the state of Louisiana to determine whether the Louisiana State Police engages in a pattern or practice of violations of the Constitution or federal law. The civil investigation we are announcing today will focus on two main issues. First, whether the Louisiana State Police has a pattern or practice of using excessive force, and second, whether the Louisiana State Police engages in racially discriminatory policing practices against Black people and other people of color. Based on an extensive review of publicly available information provided to us, we find significant justification to open this investigation now. For example, we received information about the repeated use of excessive force, often against people who are suspected of minor traffic offenses, are already handcuffed, or are not resisting. In some cases, the injuries these individuals suffered were severe, including the death of at least one individual. There are reports that officers target Black residents in their traffic enforcement practices and in use of force. I will note that Louisiana has the second highest percentage of Black residents in the country at nearly 33%. Some of the reports include disturbing information about the use of racial slurs and racially derogatory terms by LSP troopers. There are other reports of unwarranted force after pursuits involving the use of tasers and blows to the head. Our investigation will be thorough and comprehensive. This marks the first statewide pattern or practice investigation of a law enforcement agency that the Justice Department has opened in more than 2 decades. The investigation will also involve unprecedented cooperation among the Civil Rights Division and all 3 United States Attorney's offices. We will review incident reports, body-worn camera footage, and other data and documentation collected by the Department. We will also review Louisiana state policies, training materials, and supervision records, as well as documents related to systems of accountability, including how complaints are investigated and how discipline is imposed. We will meet with community members throughout the state of Louisiana, and we are opening a voicemail and email box line so that people can submit information directly to the department. We will meet with command and line staff and will participate in ride-alongs to ensure that we understand officer interactions with the community. One thing we have learned over the decades is that we must work collaboratively with the community across the state as well as with state officials. The Justice Department takes these steps in every pattern or practice investigation with the goal of ensuring that policing policies and practices are constitutional and lawful. As in every Justice Department investigation, we will follow the facts and the law wherever they lead. We have no preformed conclusions. If there is reasonable cause to believe that there is a pattern or practice of constitutional or statutory violations, we will issue a public report outlining our conclusions. If violations are found, then we will aim to work cooperatively with the state to reach an agreement on the best remedies. If an agreement cannot be reached, the Justice Department is authorized to bring a civil lawsuit seeking injunctive relief to address the violations. Today's announcement marks the 5th pattern or practice investigation opened since the start of this administration. The Justice Department's investigations into the police departments in Louisville, Minneapolis, Phoenix, and Mount Vernon, New York are ongoing, and we have secured cooperation from all of those jurisdictions. In each of these investigations, including the one that we are opening today of the Louisiana State Police, our goal is to promote transparency and accountability, which ultimately will increase public trust. I'll note that this investigation marks the 75th investigation of a law enforcement agency conducted since Congress entrusted the Department of Justice, and only the Department of Justice, with the authority to conduct pattern or practice investigations of law enforcement agencies. We take this responsibility seriously. Every American, regardless of race, has the right to constitutional policing. And we know constitutional policing is necessary to ensure public trust and to enhance public safety. We know because we have seen in our settlements across the country and over the years work to improve real-life interactions between law enforcement and the communities they serve. Recently, for example, the independent monitor for the Seattle Police Department consent decree reported a significant decrease in the use of force since 2014, including a 60% decrease in the use of serious force. Where Seattle officers once quickly resorted to the use of batons, they now use them rarely to strike individuals. More generally, our settlements also produced improved training for officers, enhanced systems of accountability, and greater transparency with the public. Finally, this civil pattern or practice investigation of the Louisiana State Police is separate from the Justice Department's criminal investigations. We recognize that there is intense public interest in the events surrounding the tragic death of Ronald Green. As U.S. Attorney Brown stated earlier this year, the Civil Rights Division and the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Western District of Louisiana are conducting a thorough criminal investigation into this matter. That investigation remains ongoing, and we are limited in what we can say at this time. However, we do want to make clear that the civil pattern or practice investigation that we are announcing today is separate and apart from any other criminal investigation. This investigation will be conducted jointly by the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division and the U.S. Attorney's offices across Louisiana. We've just briefed Governor John Bel Edwards and Superintendent Lamar Davis about the investigation, and we are pleased that both offices have pledged their support and cooperation. They recognize that we share common goals, ensuring that law enforcement officers act in a lawful and constitutional manner, which furthers public trust and public safety. We look forward to working with the state of Louisiana and the state police towards the shared goals of ensuring constitutional policing and fostering greater cooperation between law enforcement officers and the community members that they serve. I want to invite now U.S. Attorney Ronald Gath to the podium.
Thank you. Good morning. I have been the United States Attorney for the Middle District of Louisiana for the past 6 months, but I've prosecuted cases in this geographical area for over 20 years. Over the last 20 years, I have seen both crime and prosecution evolve. Crime has reached unthinkable heights. Normal, everyday offenses, ranging from the violent murder of children, possession of illegal guns, child exploitation, and theft of federal and state dollars. Law enforcement has also changed. Technology, such as in-dash and body cameras, license plate readers, and scientific advances with DNA have become everyday tools used to build cases against individuals who intend to harm not only victims, but the community of Louisiana as a whole. While crime and crime-fighting technology has increased, community involvement and trust in policing has decreased. The question becomes, can't we do both? We do not have to sacrifice the ability of the government to solve crimes in order to uphold an individual's rights. Protecting the individual rights while protecting individuals from crime is the cornerstone of our justice system and democracy overall. Today, we focus on the individual rights and establishing a long-lost confidence back in our law enforcement. There is no question that is the percentage of the population that has lost faith in law enforcement and the justice system due to the actions of a few. This leaves a community not only suffering, but afraid to participate in the fight against crime. This problem must be solved. State police is the model of all local law enforcement within the state of Louisiana. But the doubt of whether lawful procedures are being performed must be answered to restore the bonds between the community and police. So it is important to accept, help, and re-examine the patterns and practices of an institution, such as state police. Here today, with the Civil Rights Department of Justice, under Assistant Attorney General Kristen Clark, and the other United States attorneys for the districts of Louisiana, and with the support of the Louisiana State Police Colonel Lamar Davis, we promise to examine the pattern and practices of the Louisiana State Police in order to give the citizens of this state what they truly deserve, and that is to strive to be the absolute best. This administration, under the leadership of the Attorney General Merrick Garland, is committed to focusing on the civil rights of every individual. While these types of investigations require a lot of hard work on our department, we ask that the community become a part of the process. The course of this investigation will rely upon your participation. Our goal is to regain the trust of those who have lost confidence in the system and provide justice for all. Now, Mr. Dwayne A. Evans, U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Louisiana.
Good morning. This is a very important day for the state of Louisiana. The vast majority of Louisiana state police troopers honor and support the Constitution of the United States. They are dedicated, hardworking public servants who risk their lives daily to protect our communities. But we cannot ignore any allegation of constitutional violation, much less one alleging a pattern or practice of unconstitutional policing. No one should be deprived of the protections of our federal and state constitutions. Under the law, we are all equal and entitled to just, efficient, consistent, and constitutional law enforcement. That is why we're all here today, to make this joint announcement. In doing so, we pledge to conduct this investigation fairly, we welcome input from all sources, and we will be mindful of the rights, welfare, and best interests of Louisiana's citizens. We will reach out to members of the public, law enforcement, the community, leaders, and government officials in the very near future to gather additional information related to this investigation. One fact remains: LSP is an integral law enforcement partner. Their public safety and highway patrol missions are vital to the success of our federal and state partnerships and respective crime reduction efforts. Indeed, we must all work together for the sake of all of our citizens. Know also that once this investigation is complete, our partnerships will strengthen and an even greater Louisiana State Police Department will emerge. And now I would like to introduce U.S. Attorney Brandon Brown to the stand.
Good morning. My name is Brandon Brown, and I'm the U.S. Attorney for the Western District of Louisiana. Today, I join in announcing the opening of the Justice Department's civil investigation of the Louisiana State Police. This effort will be led by experienced career attorneys from the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division. Locally, Karen King has joined me today. She's a longtime AUSA in our Lafayette office. She's a well-known community servant from the Lafayette area, and she will be our district's point of contact with the Civil Rights Division. Being a law enforcement officer in 2022 is not easy. It is not easy. This has actually been the case for a very long time because of the nature of the occupation. Police officers are trained to put others in the protection of the community before and above their own safety. I want to thank the law-abiding men and women of the Louisiana State Police and all law enforcement agencies for sacrificing their lives for the betterment and the protection of our community. It's tough being a law enforcement officer for the reasons just mentioned, but it's compounded by those who might see themselves as being above the law, eroding the public's trust in law enforcement, and making it even more difficult for the vast majority of officers who perform their duties with honor and distinction. I grew up in Northeast Louisiana, and I was fortunate to personally know my childhood hero. I wanted to be just like him, and in retrospect, it was not necessarily because of what he did from a career standpoint, but it was because of how respected he was, and more importantly, how people trusted him. That childhood hero is my father. My father served more than 40 years in law enforcement in the Monroe, Louisiana area. Excuse me. I appreciate the fact that he surrounded me with law enforcement officers who served honorably and respectfully within the bounds of the law. Today, I'm reminded of two of them that were Louisiana State Police troopers. Their names were Joe Alexander and Abraham Bowie. Back then, these men were two of the few LSP troopers who looked like me. These two public servants respected the rights of the citizens they swore to protect. The citizens of Northeast Louisiana, even years after they retired, felt a sense of calmness and a sense of peace when they simply walked into a room. My father's partner at the Monroe Police Department was also a big part of my childhood, and something interesting about him is, to the contrary, he did not look like me. Nevertheless, Don McClanahan was well respected in the African American community. Regardless whether a police officer looks like Trooper Alexander, Trooper Bowie, or Major McClanahan, any law-abiding citizen should indeed feel a sense of calmness, decency, and order when in the presence of any law enforcement officer on or off duty. Unfortunately, many citizens of Louisiana have lost or never even had that feeling when coming into contact with law enforcement because of a few officers who have broken the law and abused their authority. When officers break the law, they violate their oath and undermine the community's trust. And once that trust is lost, it's hard to restore. The investigation we're announcing today will assess whether the LSP engages in use of excessive force and discriminatory conduct, singling out African Americans and other minority residents for mistreatment. If we find that a pattern or practice of such misconduct exists, one of our objections will be to find ways to regain the public's confidence in law enforcement. Because we know that when law enforcement officers respect the constitutional rights of the people they serve, they make it more likely that individuals will trust and cooperate with police. which in turn makes law enforcement more effective in combating and preventing crime. In the days to come, our team looks forward to speaking with residents and community groups, LSP leaders, and officers, and others who can provide information relevant to our investigation. They will all offer an important perspective and can provide our investigators the information they need to conduct a thorough assessment. We ask that anyone who has information relevant to this investigation contact DOJ via email at community.mypd@usdoj.gov. Excuse me, community.louisiana@usdoj.gov. We appreciate the Justice Department's time, resources, and attention that will be devoted toward reforming and stabilizing the Louisiana State Police ability to fight crime at the highest level in this state. And now we'll open it up for questions.
The advocate, Travis?
Jim Mustian, Associated Press. Lawmakers and advocates have been calling for this action for well over a year. I was hoping you could help us understand a little bit more as to why this is happening now, and what ramification that might have on the open criminal cases.
Ensuring constitutional policing is a top priority for the Justice Department. We've opened, this marks the 5th pattern or practice investigation that we have opened under this administration. We evaluated the information and public complaints and other materials that provided a picture of some of the potential issues with Louisiana State Police, and that has brought us to this point where today we are opening formally our investigation. But do know that this is a top priority for the Justice Department.
The advocate? You have a question?
Can you come back to me?
Sure.
Thanks.
BR Proud?
Yeah, so you said you're doing this investigation. Do we have a timeline of when this might be published?
We are very pleased that Colonel Davis and the Governor's Office have pledged cooperation. With their support, we expect that we will be able to move forward with our investigation expeditiously. We will review the documents and data that they provide. We will participate in ride-alongs. We will interview command and line staff. And once we complete that investigation, we will publicly share the results of our investigation. The state's cooperation will go a long way in ensuring that we are able to move forward in a timely manner.
WAFB, Kevin?
The reports and some of the video that you're citing as the launch of this investigation has been out for quite some time. Why launch it now, and why should members of the public feel confident that this investigation will result in any real action when we've seen kind of a dozen investigations and they haven't concluded, or they're not really resulting in much action?
Right. We appreciate the urgency behind many who have been calling for constitutional policing in our country. The Civil Rights Division is committed to this work, and in partnership with all 3 U.S. Attorney's offices, we look forward to carefully and closely examining the Louisiana State Police, and will publicly share the results of our findings. We have 4 other pending investigations across the country. This work is a top priority for the Justice Department.
Travis, do you have a question for us?
I'm good for now.
You did? Okay. Ms. Oldham, we have a question. Thank you.
Oh,
I'm sorry, I didn't see you. Go ahead.
Yeah, we just wanted to ask if, not only us, but every other station, our newspapers and all that have been covering the Ron Green case extensively, and then now you've got it actually being investigated by the Capitol. Would this have been picked up by you guys if it wasn't for all of that?
Our investigation today was based on publicly available information. A number of reports that have been provided by the public and other information in the public domain. We are aware of the tragic death of Ronald Green, but know that this matter is separate. This is a civil investigation that is separate and apart from any criminal investigation.
Travis, last question.
What did you mean by when you said that you would be investigating the state police and the state of Louisiana? Are there other agencies that you'll be looking at?
Generally, when we open these investigations, we look at both the law enforcement agency and the jurisdiction within which that agency lies. We will look at the role that the state of Louisiana plays in how the Louisiana State Police carries out its job. This is a typical feature of our pattern or practice investigations.